Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The snow-capped Montana mountains loomed in the distance, while Everett Mitchell leaned hunched over the facade of the Eagle Pass gas station with a pained expression on his face. There was an old Ford pickup truck parked beside him, engine still idling, driver's door open as if someone had left in a hurry. Everett's right hand pressed tightly against his abdomen, sweat soaking his shirt as his breathing became rapid and painful. "Go for a walk," were the last words Carina left him with, and with the sound of the engine and the rising dust, she drove off in their other car, leaving him alone at this remote gas station. The cold wind whistled through the roof of the gas station as if mocking his situation. Everett slid to a sitting position, his eyes blurring with pain, knowing that his appendix might have ruptured. The phone had long since died, and the gas station was empty, except for a pay phone that had stopped working at some point and hung alone on the wall. In the distance, on the highway, a news van slowly approached, emblazoned with the logo of the local KMTR TV station. "Hey, are you okay?" A young female reporter came briskly from her car to cover winter activities at the nearby national park, but accidentally discovered this scene. Everett shook his head weakly. "I need to go to the hospital. My wife." She. Female reporter Lisa Parker, who initially just wants to help a stranger in trouble, unwittingly becomes the first witness to a story that shocks the nation. "The Mitchells are finally going to put in that damn new kitchen," Everett said with a smile to his co-worker Dalton as they were sitting in the oil company's employee cafeteria. "Carina's been reading about it for 2 years. "Oh, that would cost a lot of money, wouldn't it?" Dalton asked as he took a bite of his sandwich. "Yeah, but it's worth it. You know, ever since we moved to Pinecrest, she's been wanting a better kitchen to entertain clients." Everett nodded, an expectant gleam in his eye. "She's doing well in the real estate business and needs a place where she can impress her clients." Dalton smiled. "You're a good husband, man. Not every man is willing to shell out for his wife's career. It's not just for her, it's for us." Everett tapped the table lightly. "Besides, she's working hard. Our savings have increased quite a bit since she facilitated that big Riverdale deal last year." Later that night, Everett returned to their home on the outskirts of the small town of Pinecrest. The 2-story home with a spacious backyard was purchased in their 3rd year of marriage, when Carina insisted on having enough space for real estate parties, and Everett liked the peaceful setting and the large garage he was able to tinker with. "I'm back," Everett shouted, but got no response. He walked into the kitchen and saw a note sitting on the runner. "An important client wants to see the house. Dinner is in the fridge. Love, you see." Everett sighed for the 3rd time this week. He opened the refrigerator, took out a box of leftovers, and put them in the microwave to heat up. Carina is an excellent real estate agent, and her career has always been something Everett admires. But lately, she seems to be getting busier and busier, and they are spending less and less time together. The ding of the microwave interrupted his thoughts. Everett sat alone at the dining room table, looking around the soon-to-be remodeled kitchen, hoping it would make Carina a little happier. Lately, she'd been distracted, often staring at her phone screen even at home, occasionally smiling in a way he couldn't read. Wesley Harrington met Carina at a real estate show. That day, Carina wore her favorite navy blue suit to represent the largest real estate company in the Pinecrest area. "Hello. I'm interested in local commercial real estate." A tall, well-dressed man walked up to her booth, smiled, and extended his hand. "Wesley Harrington, CEO of Harrington Development." Carina immediately recognized the name. Harrington Development was a well-known real estate development company on the West Coast, focusing on high-end commercial and residential projects. "Carina Mitchell, nice to meet you, Mr. Harrington." She shook his hand expertly, noticing the Patek Philippe watch he wore on his hand. "Please call me Wesley." His voice was low and magnetic. "I've heard good things about Pinecrest's development potential and am considering investing in a mixed-use project. Can you give me some advice?" For the next hour, Carina introduced Wesley to the Pinecrest real estate market. She found herself drawn to his expertise and keen insight into future trends. Unlike local developers who are only interested in short-term gains, Wesley talks about sustainability and how a well-designed project can transform a community. "Your insights are so refreshing, Carina." Wesley handed her a business card at the end of the show. "I'll be back in Pinecrest next week to check out a few more locations and would love to have you as my consultant." "I'd love to." Carina took the card, feeling a rush of excitement. Here's my contact info. On the way home, Carina couldn't help but think about the opportunities this encounter might bring. Being involved in Harrington Development's projects would not only earn her a generous commission, but would also enhance her reputation in the industry. She can't wait to tell Everett the good news. When she gets home, however, Everett is in the garage working on their old pickup truck, full of cell phone oil. Guess what happened today? Carina exclaims. I met the CEO of Harrington Development who was interested in Pinecrest and wanted me to be his consultant. Everett looked up with a smile. That's great, honey. What company is Harrington Development? Carina's excitement momentarily waned a bit. It's that development company that has a lot of high-end projects in Seattle and Portland that I've mentioned to you a couple times. Oh, yeah, I remember. Everett nodded, though his expression showed he didn't really remember. That must have been a big client. Congratulations. This isn't just a big client, Everett, Carina said with a hint of disappointment in her voice. This could be a turning point in my career. If the partnership goes well, I might even get the opportunity to work at their Seattle headquarters. The wrench in Everett's hand stopped. Seattle? But our lives are here, and my work is here. I'm just saying possibilities, Carina sighed. Never mind, I'll go get dinner ready. She turned and left the garage, the excitement in her mind having been replaced by a hint of annoyance. It's not the first time that whenever she talks about bigger dreams, Everett always considers the limits of reality first. She loved how down-to-earth and dependable he was, but sometimes wished he understood her desire to want more. Over the next few weeks, Carina worked with Wesley regularly, showing him around various areas of Pinecrest and discussing potential investment opportunities. Wesley's attention to detail and deep understanding of the market impressed her, while the confidence and grace with which he handled himself made her unconsciously drawn to him. One evening, after they had scouted out a possible project site, Wesley offered to go to dinner at the town's best restaurant to discuss their next steps. I'm sorry, I have to go home, Carina said hesitantly. My husband should be waiting for me for dinner. Wesley nodded gracefully. Of course, family comes first. However, I think it's just a working dinner to discuss the details of the project. If you're worried, invite your husband to come along. Carina couldn't help but frown slightly as she pictured Everett in his face-cloth shirt and work boots, sitting in an upscale restaurant, talking to someone as classy as Wesley. No, you're right. It's just a work dinner. She pulled out her cell phone. I'll just send him a message. Dinner was more enjoyable than Carina expected. Under the soft light, Wesley not only talked about the project, but also shared his experiences around the world. He tells of sunrises in Paris, vineyards in Tuscany, and panoramic views of the city as seen from the top of a Tokyo skyscraper. You've been to so many places, Carina said as she gently shook her glass. I came straight back to Pinecrest after college and basically never left the state except for a couple business trips to Portland and Seattle. That's too bad. Wesley looked her straight in the eye. A smart, talented woman like you should see the bigger world. Carina felt her cheeks heat up and wasn't sure if it was because of the wine or his words. My husband likes the peace and quiet here, and I think we're all used to it. Habit is comfortable, but it's also dangerous, Wesley says wistfully. It can make us forget what we really want. On the way home, Carina found herself thinking about Wesley's words. She does love Everett and the life they've built together, but deep down, she's always felt trapped in a world that's too small. When she arrives home, she finds Everett asleep and the TV on. She gently turned off the TV and looked at her husband's sleeping face. 8 years ago, she was attracted to his honesty and steadfastness and thought it was exactly what she wanted. But now, she wasn't so sure. As her work with Wesley progresses, Carina finds herself looking forward to seeing him more and more, while the trip home becomes heavier and heavier. In a way, Wesley represents the life her heart longed for but never dared to pursue, full of passion, adventure, and endless possibilities. One afternoon, they were discussing project options in the luxury apartment they rented in Wesley. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, you can see mountains and forests in the distance. You know, Wesley handed her a glass of champagne. My company in Seattle is expanding and needs an experienced senior real estate consultant. Carina looked at him in surprise. You mean? I mean you, Carina, he smiled. Your vision and intuition are exactly what we need. The salary is triple what you're making now, and there's an equity incentive. Carina felt a wave of vertigo. But my husband, our home is here. Think about it. Wesley gently touched her cup. And don't let anyone limit your potential. You deserve better. Their eyes met in the air, and Carina felt a tension she'd never felt before. As Wesley slowly approaches, she knows she should leave, but she doesn't. His kiss was soft and firm, and she found herself responding. Carina didn't go home right away that night. When she finally gets home, she tells Everett she's late for work, and he, Everett, who always believes her, just nods and heats up dinner for her. This pattern repeated itself over the next few weeks. Carina begins to make up more and more lies: client meetings, property tours, industry social events when, in reality, she spends most of her time with Wesley. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but couldn't stop, as if pushed deeper and deeper by an invisible force. Everett began to notice a change in his wife. She came home later and later, becoming more and more indifferent to the household chores and their life together. On several occasions, he tried to ask her if there was anything wrong, but Carina always brushed it off by saying she was busy with work. One weekend, Everett decides to surprise Carina. He spent weeks of evenings and weekends secretly building a beautiful patio in the backyard with flagstone walkways, flower beds, and a small fire pit. Just what Carina had always wanted. "I've got something to show you," he said that Saturday morning as he mysteriously took her hand and led her toward the backyard. Carina followed him, absent-mindedly thinking about her afternoon appointment with Wesley. She couldn't help but stop in her tracks when she saw the courtyard. "When did you make these?" she asked in surprise. "Evenings and weekends, the past few weeks," Everett said proudly. "I know you've been wanting a place like this to relax and entertain friends." Carina felt a pang of guilt hit her. The man still loved her with all his heart, and she betrayed him. "Thank you. It's beautiful," she forced a smile. "But I have an important client to see this afternoon." Everett's smile froze on his face. "Oh, I thought we could spend the weekend together. Maybe tomorrow." "Maybe," Carina said vaguely. "I'll go ahead and get ready." She walked quickly back inside, not seeing Everett's lost expression. In the bathroom, she stared at herself in the mirror, wondering how she had become the person she was. But when she thought of the time she would spend with Wesley in the afternoon, the guilt was replaced by anticipation. Wesley offers to take Carina to a luxury resort on the coast for a weekend to celebrate the preliminary approval of their project. "Not this weekend," Carina said. "My husband has been complaining lately that we don't have time to spend together." "You've put off our private time several times." Wesley gently stroked her cheek. "Don't you want to see that private beach I told you about? A couple of my family members will be there too." Carina hesitated. "I don't know how to explain this to Everett." "Couldn't you have told him it was work-related? A party with potential investors?" Wesley suggests. "Or maybe a trip with a female coworker?" Eventually, Carina decides to tell Everett that she's going to a real estate seminar with some female colleagues. Everett was a little disappointed but didn't express skepticism and just wished her a good time. Friday evening, as Carina was packing, her cell phone rang. "It's Everett." "Hi, honey, what's up?" She tried to sound as normal as possible. "I don't feel very well." Everett's voice sounded pained. "The right side of my abdomen is very sore. I think I might need to see a doctor." Carina stopped what she was doing. "Where are you?" "In company. They want to take me to the hospital, but I wanted to talk to you first. Can you come pick me up?" "I can't drive." Carina looked at her watch. She and Wesley had an appointment to meet at the freeway entrance at 7. "It's 6 o'clock now. I'll be right there," she said, hanging up and immediately messaging Wesley to tell him it was an emergency and he might be late. When she arrived at Everett's business, she found him huddled in a chair at the reception desk, his face pale and his forehead covered in sweat. "It's supposed to be appendicitis," the company's head of security told her, "and he needs to go to the hospital as soon as possible." Carina helps Everett into the car, both worried and annoyed. She's really concerned about Everett's health, but at the same time, she's worried about missing the weekend with Wesley. "I'm sorry to have disrupted your plans," Everett said weakly, seeming to sense her emotions. "It's okay," Carina replied reluctantly. "The important thing is to get you well." She drove up the highway to the hospital, but her mind drifted to Wesley and that beach vacation she'd been waiting for. New messages kept coming in on her cell phone, but she couldn't check them while driving. Everett's pain seemed to intensify as they passed the Eagle Pass gas station. Can I just stop? He pleaded with a weak breath. I need to go to the restroom. I might throw up. Carina turns toward the gas station and stops the car. Everett got out of the car with difficulty and bent his head toward the station. Just then, Carina's cell phone rings again. It's Wesley. Where were you? His message reads, "We can't wait to see you. The family is looking forward to it." Carina looked at the message and then in the direction of the gas station. Everett's already inside. Can't see her for a while. She made a decision. She quickly shifted to the driver's seat and started the car. Then replied to Wesley, "Sorry for the delay. Be right there." When Everett comes out of the gas station, he sees Carina getting ready to drive away. He waved weakly at her, thinking she was just adjusting her car. Carina rolled down her window and looked at her agonizing husband, a strange indifference suddenly taking over. "Go take a walk," she said coldly, and then quickly drove away from the gas station, leaving Everett standing there alone, confused and agonized. She saw him fall to his knees in the rearview mirror, but didn't stop. At the moment, she was only thinking of the new life that awaited her ahead, not the past behind her. Lisa Parker was just trying to finish a story on winter park activities when she accidentally discovered a much bigger story. "So your wife just left you here?" she asked in shock, while signaling the cameraman to continue filming. Everett nodded painfully, no longer able to speak. Lisa immediately called an ambulance and helped Everett contact his coworker, Dalton. "I can't believe it," Dalton said when he arrived at the hospital, looking at Everett, who had just undergone emergency surgery. "How could Carina do this?" "She's changed a lot lately," Everett said weakly. "I should have noticed it sooner." Meanwhile, Lisa's story aired on the news that night and quickly went viral on social media. The headline, "Wife Abandons Ailing Husband for Vacation," sparked widespread concern and outrage. By the time Carina and Wesley arrived at the beach resort, her phone was flooded with messages and missed calls. Friends, coworkers, and even strangers are asking if the husband she abandoned at the gas station is okay. "What's going on?" Wesley asked, looking at her horrified expression. A reporter found Everett. Carina shuddered, and the whole story was on the news. Wesley frowned. "That's not good. There could be implications for our program." Carina looked at him in surprise. "Project? Are you worried about the program? My marriage and reputation are over." "Calm down," Wesley soothed. "It's just a hiccup. No one will remember it in a few weeks. It's important not to let it interfere with our plans." Carina suddenly realizes that to Wesley, she may just be part of the plan, a resource to be used. But it was too late now. She had lost too much. Later that night, she stood alone on her balcony, staring out at the waves in the distance, contemplating how her choices had brought her to this moment. What she doesn't know is that hundreds of miles away in a hospital, Everett is discovering, through the tablet they share, all the messages and photos of her with Wesley and all those countless lies she's concocted to be with him. And this, just the beginning of the storm. Everett lies in his hospital bed, staring at his tablet screen, his heart pounding. Through their shared cloud storage, he sees all of Carina's correspondence with Wesley, intimate messages, scheduling of appointments, and even some intimate photos. Everything becomes clear. Her estrangement, late return, and various excuses are all about being with this man. When the nurse came in to check on his condition, she found him staring expressionlessly at the screen, his eyes red. "Mr. Mitchell, you need to rest," the nurse said with concern. "You just had surgery." Everett slowly put down his tablet, feeling a calmness he had never felt before. This calm is not equanimity, but the quiet before the storm. "Yes, I need rest," he whispered, "and to think." As the hospital lights dimmed, Everett closed his eyes, but not to sleep. He began to plan how he would cope with this betrayal, how he would rebuild his life, and, perhaps, how he would make those who had hurt him pay. Outside the hospital window, the Montana winter sun poured through thin clouds, adding a touch of warmth to the white hospital room. Everett is sitting on the edge of the bed, signing discharge papers. His abdominal wound is still painful, but doctors say he's recovering better than expected. "Mr. Mitchell, there are a couple of reporters outside who would like to interview you," the young nurse said, handing him the last form. "Would you like to see them?" Everett shook his head. "No thanks. Please tell them I need to rest." "Of course," the nurse nodded, and after a moment's hesitation added, "By the way, There's a man named Dalton waiting for you outside. He said he was coming to get you. Thanks, Everett said as he stood up and carefully put on his jacket. I'll be right out. In the hallway, Dalton waits anxiously and immediately greets Everett when he sees him come out. Jesus, man, you look like shit, he said half-jokingly, but with concern in his eyes. Is it that bad? Everett tries to smile, but the expression is more like a pained grimace. Come on, I'll give you a ride home, Dalton said as he took Everett's small bag and gently patted him on the shoulder. I've got the car ready at the back door, so we can avoid the reporters. 20 minutes later, Dalton's car pulled up in front of Everett's house. The house looked cold and unfamiliar, as if it had been vacant for days. Are you sure you don't want to come to my house for a few days? Dalton asked. Karen won't mind. No thanks, Everett shook his head. I need some time alone to organize my thoughts. Okay, Dalton reluctantly agreed. But promise me you'll call if you need to, anytime. Everett nodded and walked towards the house that had once been his haven. The moment he pushed the door open, a cold, crisp air hit him. He walked slowly through the living room. Looking at the furniture he and Carina had picked out together, the photos and decorations filled with memories. Now it all carries a bitter strangeness. On the kitchen table was the coffee cup he had left that morning before he left the house, and next to it was a note. Pork chops tonight. Love you, E. That morning, he didn't know his world was about to fall apart. Everett picked up his cell phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages on the screen, mostly from concerned friends and coworkers, but a few from Carina. Instead of opening them, he set the phone aside and walked to his study. The den had always been his sanctuary, a place where he could think and plan. Now he needed it to help him decide what to do next. Sitting at his desk, Everett opens his laptop and begins searching for information. He needs to understand the legal and practical aspects of betrayal, divorce, and rebuilding his life. A few hours later, as night fell, Everett had a tentative plan. He knew that to recover from this betrayal, he would need more than time and space. He would need justice. Not revenge, but a kind of justice that would restore his dignity. Carina returned to Pinecrest 3 days after the gas station incident. She chose to return late at night, hoping to avoid neighbors and possible reporters. Since the news broke, her cell phone has been practically bombarded. Messages of shock and disappointment from friends, notices from clients canceling appointments, and even condemnations from strangers. Her social media accounts are flooded with angry comments, and her work email inbox is piled high with complaints. Her reputation was destroyed overnight, but it was Everett's silence that scared her the most. She had tried to contact him many times, apologizing, explaining, begging for forgiveness, but got no response. Now she stood in front of their shared home, not knowing what would await her. The door was unlocked, which was a relief to her. At least he didn't change the locks. Carina gently pushed the door open and stepped into the darkened living room. Everett, she called out in a whisper, but there was no response. Turning on the lights, she found the house in order, with no sign of the chaos or anger she had expected. The living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms, everything was the same as when she left, just with less of Everett's life. Everett's clothes are gone from the master bedroom closet. On the nightstand, the frame that had held a photo of their wedding was empty. In the bathroom, his toothbrush and razor were nowhere to be found. Carina sits on the edge of her bed and suddenly realizes Everett is gone. Not temporarily, but with a note of determination. Feeling a wave of panic, she took out her cell phone and tried to contact him again, but still to no avail. Just then she noticed an envelope on the nightstand with her name on it. She shuddered as she opened it, and all that was inside was a piece of paper and a key. Carina, I've moved out. This key is for the apartment I'm renting. The address is on the back. I hired the Adams law firm to handle our divorce. They will contact you with specific details. Please do not try to contact me directly. Everything is communicated through lawyers. Everett. The message was short and calm. No blame, no anger, not even sadness. That calmness chilled Carina more than any anger. She knew that when Everett made a decision, he rarely changed his mind. That night, Carina lay alone in their bed and finally allowed herself to break down. Tears streamed silently down her face as she realized she had lost something more important than she had ever imagined. Wesley Harrington sits in his office in downtown Seattle, looking at the report in front of him with a frown on his face. Is this all the negative press and social media reaction? He asked, his voice tighter than usual. Yes, sir, his assistant replied. Public opposition to the Pinecrest project has increased by nearly 70% since the revelation that Mrs. Mitchell abandoned her husband. The local council has also said it needs to reassess our proposals. Wesley pushed the report aside in annoyance. Damn, we've invested so much time and resources. And, sir, the assistant hesitated. Mrs. Mitchell called again this morning and asked when you'd be free to see her. This is the third time she's called this week. Tell her I'm busy, Wesley said indifferently, and to get in touch with her when this Pinecrest business has settled down. The assistant nodded and left the office, leaving Wesley alone in his contemplation. He picked up his cell phone and checked the most recent message from Carina. She looked desperate and confused and kept mentioning the need for his support and comfort. But now she had become a burden, one that could threaten his professional reputation. Wesley shook his head and set the phone aside. He had originally planned to utilize Carina's local knowledge and connections to move the Pinecrest project forward, and then have her serve as a consultant in the Seattle office once the project got off the ground. But now, that plan needs to be adjusted. Maybe it's time to cut ties with Carina. He picked up the phone and dialed another number. Stevens, this is Harrington. I need you to find someone to replace Mrs. Mitchell on the Pinecrest project. Yes, immediate execution. Everett stood in front of the window of the private investigator's office, looking out at the snowflakes falling. Since moving out of his home, he has been living in a small apartment downtown, focusing on rebuilding his life and seeking some form of justice. Mr. Mitchell, Private Investigator Morgan walked into the office, a folder in hand. I have some information that may be of interest to you. Everett turned and took a deep breath. Go ahead. Morgan opens the folder and removes a few photos and some printed documents. First, about Mr. Harrington. He did have a similar pattern. Over the past 5 years, he has developed relationships with local real estate brokers in at least 3 different cities, using them to gain local market information and contacts, and then quickly ending the relationship once the project is launched. Everett received the photo with a grimace and saw that it showed Wesley interacting intimately with different women on similar occasions. Second, Morgan continued, there are some questionable aspects of Harrington Development's project in Pinecrest. There are several obvious manipulations of data in the environmental assessment report they submitted to the local planning commission, possibly to circumvent certain environmental regulations. Can you prove it? Everett asked. There are only clues at this point, but continued investigation should lead to hard evidence. Morgan replied back to also about your wife. Ex-wife. We're still technically a couple, Everett corrected, his voice calm. Yes, sorry. With regard to Mrs. Mitchell, she is in a difficult position at the moment. Most of her clients have canceled their contracts, and the company has put her on leave, effectively suspending her. And, according to our surveillance, Mr. Harrington has been avoiding her. Everett thought for a moment, then asked, where is Harrington now? He's back in Seattle, Morgan replied, and seems to be reorganizing the team at the Pinecrest project to find a replacement for Mrs. Mitchell. Everett nodded and placed the folder on the table. I need you to continue investigating Harrington Development's environmental assessment report. If it can be proven that they did tamper with the data, I'd like to know. Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Is there anything else that needs my attention? Everett ponders for a moment. Yes, I would like to know who Mr. Harrington's investors are, especially those who may be particularly sensitive to environmental issues. After leaving the PI's office, Everett drove to his law office. Since discovering Carina's betrayal, he has been calmly and systematically gathering information and evidence, not out of pure vengeance, but to ensure that he is no longer lied to and taken advantage of as he rebuilds his life. Adams' law office is located in a modern office building in the city center. Marianne Adams is one of the most respected divorce attorneys in the area, known for her professionalism and fairness. Mr. Mitchell, Marianne greeted him as he walked into the office. I just received a response from your wife's attorney. It looks like she's willing to accept most of what we're offering. Everett was a little surprised. It went better than I expected. Indeed, Marianne nodded. I think she's in a rather difficult position right now and may wish to settle this matter as soon as possible. However, she asked to keep the house. Everett was silent for a moment. That house held memories of their 8 years of marriage, both happy and painful. Now, It's more of a symbol of a past he doesn't want to look back on. Yes, he said eventually. But I want to be compensated financially accordingly. After all, I invested a lot of time and money into that house, especially with the recent renovations. Marian made a note of this. I will speak with her attorney. Any other questions? No more. Everett shook his head. I just want to settle this fairly and get on with my life. Walking out of the law office, Everett felt a strange sense of relief. At one time, he thought the breakup of his marriage would completely destroy him, but now he realizes he's stronger than he thought. Perhaps the betrayal actually liberated him to see his worth and capabilities. Back at the apartment, Everett begins to plan his next move. It's not just about justice for Carina and Wesley, it's about where he's going. He opened his laptop and began to write down a new plan, one that would make everyone face the consequences of their choices. Carina sat in her empty living room, staring at the pile of bills and collection notices on the coffee table. Her life has taken a nosedive since the gas station incident. The company has given her an indefinite leave of absence, which is actually a disguised dismissal. Her savings are rapidly depleting, and the man who promised her a bright future is now not even answering her phone calls. The last contact with Wesley was a week ago when he replied to her briefly. Carina, I'm busy right now. The company is reorganizing the Pinecrest program, and I need to focus on that. I'll be in touch when things settle down. This vague promise allowed her to hold on to a glimmer of hope for a while. But as each day passed, it became more and more remote. The doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Opening the door, she saw a lady in a formal suit. Mrs. Mitchell? I'm Charlotte Weber, Adams Law Firm. The lady handed her an envelope. This is the final version of the divorce agreement. Please check it out. Carina took the envelope and felt a wave of vertigo. The final version? But we're still negotiating. As far as I know, your attorney has agreed to all the terms, Charlotte said calmly. And we'll need you to sign the marker and send it back to our office. Or you can just bring it to the court hearing next Monday. A hearing? Carina asked in surprise. So soon? Yes, Mr. Mitchell would like to get this matter resolved as soon as possible. As you can see, the terms are quite fair. You keep the house, and he gets the appropriate financial compensation. The division of property was essentially even. When Charlotte left, Carina sat down on the couch and opened the envelope with a shudder. In reading the agreement, she realized that Everett did make a fair offer. No punitive clauses, no deliberate embarrassment, just a clean finish. This fairness almost pained her more than the anger. It proves Everett for who she is and highlights the vileness of her own behavior. Carina picks up the phone and tries again to reach Wesley. This time, the call went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message, just silently put her phone down, feeling a loneliness she'd never felt before. The next morning, Carina decides to go to Wesley's office in Pinecrest and confront him in person. She needed answers, needed to know if he ever really cared about her or if everything was just part of his plan. Harrington Development's temporary office is located in a downtown commercial building. When Carina walked into the front office, the receptionist immediately recognized her. Mrs. Mitchell, the receptionist said awkwardly. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need to see Wesley, Carina said firmly. And tell him it's important information about the Pinecrest program. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. A few moments later, she put the phone down. I'm sorry, Mr. Harrington is in the middle of a meeting and can't see you. He suggests you email to schedule a time. He's in his office, isn't he? Carina's voice began to rise. Tell him if he doesn't see me, I'll tell the press everything I know. The threat seemed to work. A short time later, a well-suited man came out. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Jason Stevens, Mr. Harrington's assistant. He's really busy, but he can give you 5 minutes. Please follow me. Wesley's office is spacious and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Pinecrest. When Carina walks in, Wesley is standing at the window with his back to the door. Thanks for meeting me, Carina said, trying to keep her voice steady. Wesley turned around with a businesslike smile on his face. Carina, good to see you, but I really have limited time. What can I do for you? His detachment and formality sent a chill down Carina's spine. The man was a far cry from the one who had whispered his love in her ear a few weeks ago. You've been avoiding me, she said bluntly. Ever since that. After the incident, you barely answered my calls. I've been busy, Wesley replied briefly. and the company is facing some challenges, especially with the Pinecrest project. Because of me? Partly, he admits, your personal issues did negatively impact the program. Local residents and officials have become more cautious about our proposals. My personal problems? Carina felt the anger start to rise. You mean my personal problem of abandoning my sick husband to be with you? You promised us a future. Wesley sighed and walked over to his desk and sat down. Carina, we're both adults. I appreciate your talent and your contribution to the program, and we did have good times. But now the situation has become complicated. So you're just going to abandon me? Carina's voice trembled with emotion. I'm not abandoning you, Wesley said calmly. I just think we need some space to deal with our respective issues. When things settle down, don't pretend there's going to be an after, Carina interrupted. You've been using me from the beginning, haven't you? To get local market information, to get close to those who have influence. Wesley's expression turned cold and hard. You're an excellent realtor, Carina. Our relationship is beneficial to both sides. You get bigger clients and higher commissions, and I get valuable local insights. As for the personal level, these things tend to have natural development cycles. Cycles? Carina repeated incredulously. Like you do in other cities? Using local agents and then dumping them. Wesley's eyes flashed with surprise, then regained their composure. I don't know what you're talking about. But my time is up, and if there's nothing else. I've lost everything, Carina whispers. My marriage, my job, my reputa, and you have nothing to lose. It's your choice, Carina, Wesley replied coldly. No one is forcing you to leave your husband. Adults are responsible for their own decisions. The words hit Carina like a slap in the face. She suddenly saw her situation clearly. She was being used, not just as a professional, but as a woman who longed to be loved and understood. She gave up real love and safety for a fantasy. As she left Wesley's office, Carina felt a sense of clarity she'd never known before. She walked towards her car, stopping suddenly to see Everett standing not far away, watching her. Their eyes met in the air, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Everett had no anger, no reproach, only a calm determination in his eyes. Then he turned toward a waiting car without looking back. Carina wanted to call out to him, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but the words turned to silence. She knew that some betrayals could not be undone. Everett sat in the Daltons' backyard and watched his friends' children play on the lawn. After leaving the Harrington Development office building, he came straight here in need of some solace from a normal life. So you saw her? Dalton handed him a beer and sat down in the chair next to him. Yes, Everett nodded. She just came from Wesley's office. It doesn't look good. How do you feel? Everett thought for a moment. Honestly, I feel relieved. I didn't feel the anger or pain I expected to feel when I saw her. Just a feeling of confirmation that it's all over. That's good. Dalton lifted his beer and clinked glasses with Everett. I'm proud of you, man. The way you've handled all this. Many will choose to retaliate or give themselves up. Revenge won't make me feel better, Everett said softly, but justice will. Just then, Everett's cell phone rang. It's Morgan Private Investigators. Mr. Mitchell, we have found conclusive evidence. Morgan's voice was filled with excitement. That Harrington development did indeed falsify the environmental assessment data, specifically the section on the project's potential impact on local water sources. You can prove it? Everett asked, and Dalton looked at him curiously. Totally. We were provided with the original data and the version that was revised and presented to the Planning Commission. The differences were quite significant. Additionally, we found that several of Harrington's major investors are environmental funds that are expressly prohibited from investing in projects that could cause environmental damage. Send me all the information, Everett said, and also find out the contact information for these investors. After hanging up, Everett explained the situation to Dalton. So this is your justice? Dalton asked. Expose Harrington's business fraud? Partly, Everett replied. He used Carina as he used other women and the community as a whole. The truth should be revealed. This could have caused further damage to Carina, Dalton noted. Everett mused for a moment. It might. But it's not about hurting her. It's about truth and responsibility. Wesley should be held accountable for his behavior, and Carina, she needs to face the consequences of her choices. Over the next few days, Everett began to execute his plan. He first anonymously provided evidence of the doctored data to Harrington's environmental investors, then contacted local environmental organizations and a number of investigative journalists. He makes no mention of Carina or their personal vendetta, focusing only on the environment and business ethics. The results came faster and more violently than he expected. Harrington's major investors immediately called for an independent investigation. The local planning commission suspended project approvals, and the media began to pick up on the story, portraying Wesley Harrington as a developer seeking personal gain at the expense of the environment. While all this was going on, Everett's divorce proceedings from Carina were underway. They met head-on for the first time at the final hearing. Outside the courtroom, Carina stops him. "It's you, isn't it?" she asked, her voice low. "Something about Wesley's environmental data?" Everett didn't answer directly. "The truth always comes out, Carina. He lost almost all of his investment," she said, "and the project was canceled and he could face an investigation. It's a result of his own choices," Everett responded calmly, using what Wesley had told her. Carina was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I'm sorry, Everett, for everything." Everett looked at her and saw the remorse and pain in her eyes. Part of him wanted to forgive her, wanted to say everything would be okay. But another part knows that some hurts are too deep to heal easily. "I'm sorry it came to this, too," he said finally. "And I hope you can start over, Carina. Really." With that, he walked into the courtroom without looking back. On a Saturday morning 3 months later, Everett stood on the balcony of his new apartment overlooking the city. The divorce has been finalized. He recently received a promotion at his company, and his life is getting on track. The doorbell rings, and it's Dalton and his family picking him up to join them for a picnic. "Ready?" Dalton asked, his children already running excitedly to the car. "Almost there," Everett said, grabbing his ready backpack. "Just need to grab one more thing." He went to his desk and picked up an envelope. Inside is a private investigator's final report detailing Wesley Harrington's business fraud and manipulation of multiple women. Since the environmental data came to light, Wesley's company has been in serious trouble, with several projects called off, investors pulling out, and he himself facing a commercial fraud investigation. Everett glanced at the report, then put it through the shredder. He's gotten the justice he wanted, and now it's time to really let go and move on. "Everything okay?" Dalton asked as Everett returned to the door. "Yes," Everett said with a smile. "It's all over." They drove out of the city and headed for the lake surrounded by mountains. It was a clear day, with the sun shining on the lake and the mountains looming in the distance. Sitting down on a picnic blanket and watching Dalton's children play by the lake, Everett felt a sense of peace. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer dominated his life. He learns to value himself and understands that true love should be supportive rather than exploitative, loyal rather than betraying. He pulls out his cell phone and sees a news tweet that Wesley Harrington has been formally indicted for business fraud and that Harrington Development's stock price has plummeted. Scrolling down further, he saw a small piece of local news. Everett Mitchell, a former real estate agent, was leaving Pinecrest for the East Coast looking for a fresh start. Everett turned off his cell phone and looked up at the blue sky. Wherever Carina goes, he hopes she finds true happiness, even if that comes after a painful lesson. As for himself, there are still many possibilities waiting to be explored in the future. Later in the evening, as they pack up and prepare to leave, Dalton's daughter hands Everett a small flower she picked at the lake. "Here you go, Uncle Everett," she said innocently. "Mom says flowers mean new beginnings." Everett took the flowers and smiled softly. "Thank you, little one. I think your mom is right." He pinned the flowers to his pocket and walked toward the parking lot into the setting sun. Behind him, the lake calmly mirrored the sky, like the peace that was gradually returning within him. In the distance, a news van drives by with the KMTR-TV logo on it, reminding Everett of that fateful turning point. Sometimes the greatest betrayal brings unexpected liberation, and closure can be a new beginning. Meanwhile, in a small town on the East Coast, Carina sits in a cafe with a job ad from the local newspaper in front of her. Her savings are almost depleted, and she desperately needs to find a job. Wesley's scandal and her own gas station incident left her with no place to stay in Pinecrest, and she was forced to leave for a new start. In the newspaper, a job ad for a small real estate company caught her eye. The pay wasn't great, and the status was nowhere near as good as her position at Pinecrest, but it might be her only chance. Ms. Mitchell, the cafe waitress handed her a cup of coffee. The latte you ordered. Thank you. Carina smiled, noting that the waiter had used the word ma'am instead of lady. In this new place, where no one knew about her past, no one talked about her choices, she could start over. She pulls out her cell phone and sees the last news item about Wesley. He has been formally charged and could face jail time. She felt no gloating, only a hint of mixed emotions: anger at having been so easily deceived, sympathy for those he had hurt, and reflection on her own role. There was another photo on her phone of her and Everett in happier times. She should have deleted it, but could never make up her mind. The man who had loved her, supported her, and treated her with dignity and justice even after she had betrayed him most cruelly was probably the best thing she had ever lost. Carina put her cell phone back in her bag and looked up out the window at the unfamiliar street. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was a life she had to accept because of her choices. She will learn from her mistakes and try to rebuild, even if the road is long and hard. She looked down at the job ad in the paper, drew a circle around it, and then picked up her cell phone. Hello, I am calling about the real estate assistant position. Outside the cafe, the fall leaves are falling and a new season is about to begin. No matter how painful the past may have been, the future is always a possibility, even if that possibility is fraught with uncertainty and challenges. It's the most important lesson she's learned from losing everything. Every choice has consequences, and those consequences, good or bad, shape who we become. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.